Welcome to this latest book review. I'm going to talk about a novel that I just got through reading, and it was a novel that I actually did a video about not that long ago when I was about maybe a third of the way through it, and I was kind of excited about the direction it was going, and it was a book that I was really anticipating reading because I thought it was just the kind of thing that I would like to write about and the kind of story that really interested me because it was, part mystery and then part revenge and a plot and things that are going on, and it takes place over a long period of time. I'm talking about Final Girls by Riley Sager. So this is the book that I'm going to talk about today. Just got through reading it over the weekend, so a couple days ago from when this video is being produced. And as I finished reading it, I really felt pretty good about it. I went on Goodreads and I actually gave it a 4-star review, which is pretty high because I'm typically a pretty tough grader for novels that I read. I'm usually pretty stingy as far as giving out 4 or 5 stars. I'm not even sure I've ever given a 5-star review on Goodreads. And so I did end up giving it a 4-star because I was really kind of excited and intrigued by the characters in it, especially the lead character, Quincy Carpenter, who kind of caught my attention and captured my imagination from the beginning because she was a very complex figure that went through a tremendous trauma, and then you fast forward to 10 years later. And then you have the whole thing with the final girls and these women that went through this great trauma, these different great traumas, and they are all kind of being tied together by the media and by others. And so it really created a kind of a multi-layered drama over the course of the novel that I found very interesting. And Quincy's character I thought was really great and captured my attention because of her complexity, because she was not a perfect type of character that sometimes you expect to see in a novel or in a movie or whatever. And she certainly had her share of flaws. And so, by the way, the spoilers in this should be pretty minimal. I'm definitely not going to give away the ending of the book because it's something that I think you should work your way through. Although I thought that it was... I read a review on Goodreads, and the reviewer characterized the ending as being nonsensical. And I can see where she was coming from when she said that because it's something it'll kind of throw you for a little bit of a loop. Some people will say that they figured it out, like there's always somebody that says, "Oh yeah, I figured it out like 3 pages in. I knew who the killer was, or I knew who the bad person was, or something like that." There's always somebody that's going to say that, and sometimes they're telling the truth. Maybe not 3 pages in telling the truth, but usually, you get to about 3/4 of the way through the book, and you feel pretty confident, like, yeah, I think I kind of know where this is headed. I think I know who the killer is or who the evildoer is in this book. And sometimes people are going to be right. In this case, I was actually wrong until probably maybe a little bit more than 3/4 of the way through. I was kind of really enjoying the story more so than trying to solve the actual mystery, which is usually the opposite for me. I'm usually trying to solve the mystery so much that I'm not enjoying the story. But I was really caught up in kind of a subplot that takes place throughout the book with the two of the 3 main characters in it, and the 2 women characters, the 2 quote-unquote final girls, even though it has a weird twist to it that will kind of throw you for a little bit of a loop. But it was really good. I like the characters. I like the complexity of the story. The ending was interesting, I will say. Nonsensical, the one person called it. And again, I get where she was coming from with that. It was a little bit of a head scratcher for some people, but it was really an interesting story. It held my attention from start to finish, and it was, let me see, I didn't even look at the word count here, but it was, 440 plus words. So, for me to finish a book of that length is pretty significant. I typically read shorter novels, and this one I knew was going to be a little bit longer, and so it was going to kind of push me a little bit and push my comfort zone. But again, I liked the story idea and what they were trying to do, and they kind of go back and forth during the story. They kind of you get toward the end. You have present, what's going on in the present, and then they were flashing back to the trauma that Quincy endured. They were kind of telling those two stories kind of parallel, which was kind of interesting. I usually don't like that, the kind of flashback storytelling. I usually don't really get into that, but in this case I did. I thought it really worked in this case. It might be something I might try in some of my writing in the future. So it did, that part did work, and that parallel storytelling really kind of converged right there at the end, and it actually did kind of work. So it was really compelling. It dragged a little bit. I thought the final act in some ways dragged a little bit, as I was kind of thinking, man, this is going to end. 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 This is going to end soon. And it kind of kept going at the end. And even though you kind of knew what was going to happen for a pretty good chunk of the final part of the final act of the book, you kind of knew what had happened was pretty clear. And it was just kind of, punch card things, just kind of cleaning up the little stuff toward the back end of it, which kind of lost me. But I did finish reading it just because I was kind of curious to see if they were going to if the writer was going to throw one final little curve at me. But it really didn't really happen that way. And then the very, very end was kind of like a little bit cliche in what happens at the very, very end of the story. And so I would definitely recommend it, though. It's a compelling story with the way the characters are and the way the characters interact and the things that happen, and then the convergence of the past that led to where Quincy Carpenter is in the present, and the way that the two stories kind of paralleled each other toward the end and then kind of met at the very end was very interesting. And so I think it's a read that I would recommend. It might leave you be scratching your head a little bit at the end, but I think you'll finish it, and I think for the most part people will enjoy it. And I think for the most part people have enjoyed it. Did see a lot of reviews on it. So yeah, that's kind of the way I feel about it. Again, Final Girls by Riley Sager. I actually bought another Riley Sager book that's on the way, and so excited to see once I get kind of interested in those kind of stories that a certain author tells, I usually become interested enough to try to check out other stories that seem interesting to me that this author has written, especially if they have a certain type of style. Again, like I said, that's really interesting, or the way that they draw characters is pretty interesting. And so I'm going to give Riley Sager another try and see how that one goes. But again, Final Girls, did enjoy it. Definitely would recommend it if you like this kind of story with a trauma that happens, and then the backstory of how that trauma went down, and then how the person that was the victim of the trauma, how they cope with it, and how they try to overcome those demons that continue to haunt them over the course of the story. So, very good one. I would recommend. I wouldn't get it a 5-star necessarily for Goodreads, but I did give it 4. Some people I think went 3 to 4. I think that was kind of typical of the range that I saw for the reviews that I read. So, Final Girls by Riley Sager. Definitely recommend you check it out. If you can, hit the like button for this video. Also, please be sure to subscribe, and look forward to the next video on this channel.